Welcome to this YouTube channel. In this video we are going to talk about 10 things to know about Iranian rock music. So before starting this video, please like this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. The music of Iran encompasses music that is produced by Iranian artists. In addition to the traditional folk and classical genres, it also includes pop, and internationally celebrated styles such as jazz, rock, and hip-hop. Iranian music influenced other cultures in West Asia, building up much of the musical terminology of the neighboring Turkic and Arabic cultures, and reached India through the 16th century Persianate Mughal Empire, whose court promoted new musical forms by bringing Iranian musicians. Iranian rock, also known as rock red, refers to rock music produced by Iranian artists. Rock music has been popular in Iran since the late 40s, with the emergence of singers such as Korosh Yakmaye, Fahad Merad, Feridun Farugi and Habib Mohabian, but was largely forgotten after the Iranian Revolution. Like most rock styles, electric guitar and bass guitar, and drums are the main instruments in this type of music. In some groups, the keyboard also has the task of adjusting the rhythms and cymbals. Iranian rock music is influenced by English rock, American rock, and European styles. Because of the Iranian performers of this music, various types of Iranian rhythms and tones in this genre are separated from other rock genres. Iranian rock is not yet recognized as a legal style in Iran. Most bands and singers of this genre operate underground. The movie No One Knows About Persian Cats is about this. Here are 10 things you need to know about Iranian rock music. Number 10. Music in Iran is evidenced by the pre-Iranian archaeological records of Elam. The oldest civilization in southwestern Iran dates back thousands of years. Iran is the birthplace of the earliest complex instruments, which date back to the 3rd millennium BC. A number of trumpets made of silver, gold and copper were found in eastern Iran, that are attributed to the Oxus civilization and date back between 2200 and 1750 BC. The use of both vertical and horizontal angular harps have been documented at the archaeological sites of Madaktu, 650 BC, and Kul-e-Farah, 900 to 600 BC, with the largest collection of Elamite instruments documented at Kul-e-Farah. Multiple depictions of horizontal harps were also sculpted in Assyrian palaces, dating back between 865 and 650 BC. Number 9. In the post-medieval era, musical performances continued to be observed and promoted through especially princely courts, Sufi orders and modernizing social forces. Under the reign of the 19th century Qajar dynasty, Iranian music was renewed through the development of classical melody types, radif, that is the basic repertoire of Iran's classical music, and the introduction of modern technologies and principles that were introduced from the West. Mirza Abdullah, a prominent tar and sitar master and one of the most respected musicians of the court of the late Qajar period, is considered a major influence on the teaching of classical Iranian music in Iran's contemporary conservatories and universities. Radif, the repertoire that he developed in the 19th century, is the oldest documented version of the 7-dastgah system, and is regarded as a rearrangement of the older 12 makam system. Number 8. Ali Naki Vaziri, a respected player of numerous Iranian and Western instruments who studied Western musical theory and composition in Europe, was one of the most prominent and influential musicians of the late Qajar and early Pahlavi periods. He established a private music school in 1924, where he also created a school orchestra composed of his students, formed by a combination of the tar and some Western instruments. Vaziri then founded an association named Music Club, Kolab-e-Musiki, formed by a number of progressive-minded writers and scholars, where the school orchestra performed concerts that were conducted by himself. He was an extraordinary figure among the Iranian musicians of the 20th century, and his primary goal was to provide music for ordinary citizens through a public arena. The Tehran Symphony Orchestra, Orchestra-e Samphony-e Tehran, was founded by Ghulam Hossein Minbashian in 1933. It was reformed by Parviz Mahmoud in 1946, and is currently the oldest and largest symphony orchestra in Iran. Later, Ruhollah Khaliki, a student of Vaziri, established the Society for National Music Anjuman-e-Musiki-e Melli in 1949. Numerous musical compositions were produced within the parameters of classical Iranian modes, and many involved Western musical harmonies. Iranian folkloric songs and poems of both classical and contemporary Iranian poets were incorporated for the arrangement of orchestral pieces that would bear the new influences. Number 7. Prior to the 1950s, Iran's music industry was dominated by classical artists. New Western influences were introduced into the popular music of Iran by the 1950s, with electric guitar and other imported characteristics accompanying the indigenous instruments and forms, and the popular music developed by the contributions of artists such as Vigan, who was known as the Sultan of Iranian pop and jazz music. Vigan was one of Iran's first musicians to perform with a guitar. Following the 1979 revolution, the music industry of Iran went under a strict supervision, and pop music was prohibited for almost 2 decades. Women got banned from singing as soloists for male audiences. In the 1990s, the new regime began to produce and promote pop music in a new standardized framework, in order to compete with the abroad and unsanctioned sources of Iranian music. Under the presidency of reformist Khatami, as a result of easing cultural restrictions within Iran, a number of new pop singers emerged from within the country. Since the new administration took office, the Ministry of Irshad adopted a different policy, mainly to make it easier to monitor the industry. The newly adopted policy included loosening restrictions for a small number of artists, while tightening it for the rest. However, the number of album releases increased. Number 6. Iran's folk, ceremonial and popular songs might be considered vernacular, in the sense that they are known and appreciated by a major part of the society, as opposed to the art music, which caters for the most to more elite social classes. The variance of the folk music of Iran has often been stressed, in accordance to the cultural diversity of the country's local and ethnic groups. Iranian folk songs are categorized in various themes, including those of historical, social, religious and nostalgic contexts. There are also folk songs that apply to particular occasions such as weddings and harvests, as well as lullabies, children's songs and riddles. Number 5. There are several traditional specialists of folk music in Iran. Professional folk instrumentalists and vocalists perform at formal events such as weddings. Storytellers Nakal Gosan would recite epic poetry such as that of the Sarnaim, using traditional melodic forms interspersing with spoken commentary, which is a practice found also in Central Asian and Balkan traditions. The Baksai, wandering minstrels who play the dota, entertain their audiences at social gatherings with romantic ballads about warriors and warlords. There are also lament singers, Rauzi Zan, who recite verses that would commemorate the martyrdom of religious figures. Iranian singers of both classical and folk music may improvise the lyric and the melody within the proper musical mode. Many Iranian folk songs have the potential of being adapted into major or minor tonalities, and therefore a number of Iranian folk songs were arranged for orchestral accompaniment. Number 4. Many of Iran's old folkloric songs were revitalized through a project developed by the Institute for the Intellectual Development of Children and Young Adults, a cultural and educational institute that was founded under the patronage of Iran's former Empress Farah Pahlavi in 1965. They were produced in a collection of quality recordings, performed by professional vocalists such as Pari Zanganeh, Munir Vakili and Minu Javan, and were highly influential in Iran's both folk and pop music productions. Number 3. Iran's symphonic music, as observed in the modern times, was developed by the late Qajar and early Pahlavi periods. In addition to instrumental compositions, some of Iran's symphonic pieces are based on the country's folk songs, and some are based on poetry of both classical and contemporary Iranian poets. Symphonische Dichtungen aus Persian Symphonic Poems from Persia, a collection of Persian symphonic works, was performed by the German Nuremberg Symphony Orchestra, and conducted by Iranian conductor Ali Rabari in 1980. Loris Jeknavorian, an acclaimed Iranian-Armenian composer and conductor, composed Rostam and Sorab, an opera with Persian libretto, that is based on the tragedy of Rostam and Sorab from Iran's long epic poem Sarnaim, in over 2 decades. It was first performed by the Tehran Symphony Orchestra, at Tehran's Rudaki Hall in December 2003. In 2005, the Persepolis Orchestra Melil Orchestra played a piece that dates back 3,000 years. The notes of this piece, which were discovered among some ancient inscriptions, were deciphered by archaeologists, and are believed to have belonged to the Sumerians and the ancient Greeks. Renowned Iranian musician Peyman Soltani conducted the orchestra. Number 2. Following the emergence of radio under the reign of the Qajar dynasty, a form of popular music was formed and began to develop in Iran. Later, the arrival of new Western influences such as the use of the guitar and other Western instruments marked a turning point in Iran's popular music by the 1950s. Iranian pop music is commonly performed by vocalists who are accompanied with elaborate ensembles, often using a combination of both indigenous Iranian and European instruments. The pop music of Iran is largely promoted through mass media, but it experienced some decade of prohibition after the 1979 revolution. Public performances were also banned, but they have been occasionally permitted since 1990. The pop music of Iranian diasporan communities has also been significant. Number 1. Rock music was introduced into Iran's popular music by the 1960s, together with the emergence of other Western European and American musical genres. It soon became popular among the young generation, especially at the nightclubs of Tehran. In post-revolutionary Iran, many rock music artists are not officially sanctioned, and have to rely on the internet and underground scenes. In 2008, power metal band Angband signed with German record label Pure Steel Records is the first Iranian metal band to release internationally through a European label. They had collaborations with well-known producer Arkham Kola. What do you think of this list? Do let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.